Do podcast guests get paid? Most of the time, no. I believe that one of the biggest mistakes guests can make is thinking they're giving more value to the show than the show is giving to them. So they feel they should be paid for their time, where the reality is, no, you should not expect to get paid. So in theory, there are kind of three models here, right? Super simple. First, interviews where no money changes hands, and this is standard because the value that the host and the guests are each getting from the interview tends to be equal. And I'll get onto what exactly those benefits are for hosts and guests here in a minute. Second model is hosts paying guests. I wasn't able to find any credible reports of money changing hands this way. I've seen the odd, very small show offer to pay a guest like $50 or so, but like I said, this is by far the least common model. The third is guests paying hosts. This is also uncommon, but it does happen, especially with some really big shows. And in these cases, the guest has got to be certain of a huge return on investment. For example, Human Upgrade host Dave Asprey told Bloomberg he charges about 1% of guests on the show, but those payments are steep. They're up to like 50 grand. And the Skinny Confidential, him and her podcast, was reported to charge between $20,000 and $40,000 for an appearance on the podcast. So we're talking big bucks here, right? And at the other end, I have seen some shows with less than 10,000 listeners ask guests for a few $100s. There's some debate in the industry over whether charging guests is the right thing to do. At the very least, the host or podcast should disclose it, right? Because it's basically an ad at that point or sponsored content. Okay, circling back to the value exchange, I want to talk about what the host gets out of you appearing on their show, and therefore what you need to bring. Otherwise, they're not going to say yes to your pitch or invite you back. The main thing that hosts get is fresh, useful content from people who are experts in a particular field. And hosts are always thinking about their listeners and what they're going to enjoy, which is why they only say yes to guests who bring interesting things to say. And this is where, again, a lot of guests kind of stuff up. They either don't target the right shows or they haven't got unique insights or perspectives to bring to the show. So how do you know if a show is the right show? Well, the biggest factor is audience match, right? So does the podcast audience align with your target audience? You're going to want to look at the things like where listeners are based, their job, their interest, then think about what problems the audience cares about, what topics have been covered, and what content gaps you can fill, and also what practical tips you can give. Because you're going to need to highlight all of that in your pitch if you want to get booked. When it comes to the value you're getting as a guest, you're essentially borrowing the host's trust and stepping in front of listeners who already care about your topic. So the attention is warmer than a classic ad. And that can get you clicks to your site or even new customers, especially because most shows will link to your website or socials in the episode description. Over time, appearances compound into industry authority, which can open doors to bigger interviews where you get even more exposure. I recommend watching this video to see how to use Raphonic to find podcasts that are a good fit. Just remember, don't expect to get paid for your podcast appearances. I'll catch you next time.